Hello, I'm Gever Tulley. I'm author of the book 50 Dangerous Things You Should Let Your Children Do, and I'm the founder of a school in San Francisco called Brightworks and a camp in California called Tinkering School. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter, and today I'd like to present a new talk I call 5 Dangerous Ideas for Surviving the Pandemic. I have a little bit of a reputation for giving children power tools. This habit has allowed me to work with children all over the world, building amazing things. And what I've discovered is that children are really good at working with tools and doing dangerous things. They have an incredible self-preservation instinct that helps them stay safe. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this book that we wrote. My wife and I made this book when we realized that fear was preventing parents from letting their children have adventures in childhood. To me, it seemed as if the whole world was off limits. So we thought about what simple things that parents could let their children do that would help them see that it is okay for their kids to do real things. And we wanted kids to see that they can learn to recognize and reduce risk. We didn't know it 10 years ago, but this turned out to be a great book for the pandemic. This book started a little after I started a summer camp where parents would drop off their children at our house and we would build things with their children for a week. We started small in our very first week by building a bridge from my studio to a tree about 7 meters away, just as a warm-up exercise. Well, that bridge was so strong that it was able to carry every child who was at the camp and all of the staff. It was for us the beginning of understanding that children could do the same kind of real work that parents do. One day at the camp, a young camper started making a boat out of cardboard. And when it looked right to him, he wrapped a plastic sheet around and we took it down to the shark-infested waters of the Pacific Ocean to try it out. Now, I'll tell you, in this picture, he's only in about half a meter of water. But for him, this was the beginning of a thrilling adventure where he was going to brave the ocean and come back with a story to tell. In every one of these projects, we started off with an idea and a set of materials. And what was amazing was that our best projects happened when none of us on the staff or any of the students had ever done that project before. It worked best when none of us knew if the project was going to work or not. We saw the highest engagement with our students when we didn't know that it was going to work. We saw potential in everything. Nearby, these 18 kilometers of railroad track were abandoned and about to turn into a public hiking trail. We saw it as the perfect place to make sail-powered trains. We dropped the students off in a small town, set them on the railroad track, and told them we would meet them 18 kilometers away with pizza. It was up to them to get there. What we didn't realize is that the wind would die in the middle of the day, and they had to push their carts almost 6 kilometers. Nothing like pizza to keep them motivated. If there's one simple reason that our camp succeeds the way that it does, it is that we give our students real tools, the exact same kinds of tools that adults use. real materials, the very same wood that a contractor would buy to build a house, and real problems to solve that don't have known solutions. The best problems are the ones that don't have an answer at the back of the book. A few years into running the summer camp, one of my students asked a question at dinner. She said, "I've never worked this hard in my life. Why can't school be more like this?" Well, turns out she was going to one of the most academic schools in our community. It wasn't that she hadn't worked hard before. It's that she had never cared so much about the work. She was never as passionate about getting something to work as she was when she was at camp. Well, I thought this was a marvelous question, and I thought about it for a year, and I wondered why we shouldn't just try it. So in 2011, I started a school called Brightworks. Inspired by the work that we had done in collaboration with the kids at summer camp, we imagined a place where the student was as invested as the staff, where intrinsic motivation, that desire that comes from within, that would be our metric, the thing that we measured. How engaged are the students? Our school offers children a complete education from kindergarten until they go to college at the end of high school. It's hard to describe just how different life is at our school. So one morning, I walked around the school and just filmed what was going on.
Give me your wrist.
You're already doing better than me. All right, let's get it together.
Do you get a pixel? You get a pixel.
So, as you can see, it's a very unusual school. Well, it was just before we opened the school that my wife and I wrote this book. We developed the book to be both a guide for parents that might be nervous about letting their children climb trees or use tools. But here is the crazy idea at the heart of the book. In order for children to be safe in the world, they need to know how to recognize a risky situation. And the only way to do that is by doing things that are a little bit risky. So let's take a look at 5 ideas that you can do during a pandemic. 4 are from the book that I think everyone can do at home. And I've added one new one that I have discovered is very important and necessary for survival during a pandemic. So let's get started, shall we? Here's number 1. This is topic 17 from the book 50 Dangerous Things. And this is one topic that I think makes all parents nervous. I think this is because they're worried about what might happen when their children know how to make fire. But during a pandemic, when we are all encouraged, or shall I say required, to stay at home, we must find opportunities for self-directed learning. All we need is a lens and some sunlight. We clear a little space to work outside or work on a porch, to work on a deck. And we break this activity down into the 3 simple steps that children can manage on their own. First, they must prepare. Find or make a little area that's clear of things that might catch on fire. A sidewalk or a rooftop or out on the grass in a park. These are all ideal places to do it. Second, we have to focus the light. And this is the part of the experience that we, as adults, we take for granted, and we forget that this is a process of discovery for a child. To understand that the light will focus as you move the lens up and down, and to understand that the lens is concentrating that sunlight. These are all physics properties that can be discovered by the child just by playing with the lens. The third step, of course, is the most exciting, which is when your piece of wood catches on fire. It's such a simple activity, and yet we find that students can explore this idea and discover what does and doesn't burn for hours at a time. It is a very engaging activity for a young child to control something so hot. Okay, so that's our first one. Let's look at a new idea, and one that kind of caught me off guard during the pandemic. Number 2 today is commit to a project that includes others. This one is not in the book, but it's an idea that's worth sharing. In California, the pandemic was slowed down by locking everyone inside and restricting social contact. This meant canceling all of the summer camps, which eliminated one of our primary social connections with students during the summer and deprived us of a significant source of income for our organization. Our response was something that we call the Mars Project. Over a period of 9 weeks, lots of video conferencing and very careful scheduling, taking turns building at the building site, we built a giant model of a lava tube on Mars. This involved moving 22,000 kilograms of sand and crushed rock, using these small buckets and bringing it up 2 flights of stairs or raising it up to a window using a rope. Every step of the way, we had to figure out how to do the work and keep ourselves safe during the pandemic. While the lava tube was being built by a group of students who lived in the city near the school, we also had to build these robots. With so many of the team trapped at home in cities far from where the lava tube was being built, we developed a robot that could be driven by children at home from their laptops. One person would cut 6 sets of parts for the next version of the robot and then mail those parts to each of the team members to be assembled and tested at home. Well, you can imagine this process took many iterations and required us to figure out new ways of collaborating and communicating that would work at a distance. In spite of all of these difficulties, we built 22 robots to support 20 students in the Mars experience at the same time. The result of all this effort was that last summer, at the very height of the pandemic, we offered a new kind of online camp where kids could work together to do missions on Mars. What you see here is them collaborating through the robots to get work done. The pandemic will keep making it difficult for us to be together, and we must find ways of being safe and keep doing the things that keep us connected. So we have to look for projects that give us an opportunity to appreciate and celebrate the ideas and the work of our peers. All right, on to number 3. You know, this is one of my favorite topics in the book because often when students find this one, or children find this one, they immediately ask the question of like, what's so hard about being blindfolded for an hour? Well, during the pandemic, winter storms caused large parts of the United States to lose power, and we lost it for many days. And as a result, families found themselves living in the dark after they had used up all of the batteries in the house. This was the first time that many of them had experienced life without being able to see anything at night. We've heard wonderful stories from around the world about how this simple activity leads to great things, but one of my favorite stories actually happened at my school. After spending 1 hour blindfolded, a 6-year-old student decided that she wanted to experience a whole day without sight. She made a special pair of goggles, working with a few of the older students, that were comfortable enough to wear all day. And the rest of the students took turns helping her throughout the day, taking her to park for the recess, taking her back to the school, helping her come out of the school and meet her parents to get a ride home. Everything she did, eating her lunch, was with the help of others. She went home with the goggles on and didn't take them off until she went to sleep. Her parents reported that by the end of the day, she could walk all the way through the house from her bedroom to the kitchen without bumping into anything. Doing this simple thing turned a normal day into an adventure and gave her an appreciation for what life might be like if she didn't have the gift of sight. Okay, here's another very controversial topic in the book. Learn to carve using a pocket knife. This is a topic that when adults are looking at the book in a bookstore and they flip through, this is sometimes a topic where they'll read it and I'll see them they'll frown and they'll close the book and put it back on the shelf. My wife says this is the topic that unsells the book. But I have found that telling parents to give their child a knife is a good way to lose friends. The more we practice using a tool, the easier it becomes to learn how to use other tools. And in this way, a knife is a great first tool for a child. You know, culturally, parents' attitudes about children and knives varies greatly from country to country, or from being in a city to being on a farm. And in general, what I find is that parents in rural communities where farming and forests and, taking care of animals is common, they tend to give children access to knives at a much younger age than parents in cities. And I wonder sometimes if parents in cities think that somehow because their child is growing up in a city, they somehow can't be trusted with a knife. It's an interesting question that so far I haven't gotten a good answer and have found no research about it. Parents are most often concerned that a child will injure themselves with a knife, but what we find is that it only takes about 10 minutes to teach a child how to work with a knife safely. Just a few simple rules. Always cut away from your body. Always be sitting when you're using a knife. And the thing about giving a child a knife is that it does two amazing things. First, it gives children the power to shape their world. Using a knife is a skill that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And this simple activity changes their internal idea about what kinds of things they can do. And second, it demonstrates to them that we trust them. There is no better way for a child to understand that they are trusted by an adult than to teach them how to use a knife and then walk away and leave them with that knife. They understand down in their hearts that suddenly we're treating them with a new kind of respect. Okay, we're moving right along here. Number 5 is one of my personal favorites. If I could take you on a tour of my shop, you would see a big box full of parts that I have rescued from broken appliances that I've used later to build robots or build machines with children. One thing that I think is interesting is that we treat the appliances in our daily lives like they are some kind of magic box. And we never actually consider all of the work and the parts that went into making a toaster or a machine that washes clothes. It just is there on the kitchen counter making toast. We don't really open it up and look inside. Well, I have discovered that it only takes a few simple tools to take apart most things. And if instead of throwing out something that is not working anymore, we take a moment and take it apart with the child before we throw it out, there are all kinds of things to discover inside. Every manufactured product can be taken apart into simpler and smaller parts until you have something that is either a small electronic component that can't be understood without going to the internet and looking it up, or a simple mechanical mechanism that you can move back and forth and understand what it did or how it works. And trying to understand what parts do is a great way for children to explore a mystery on their own and to start to understand that everything they use in their lives was made by people, and that they could, with a little bit of training, also be one of those people who can make a toaster or a radio or create something new that's never been seen before. Taking things apart to understand them or repair them is a way of learning that connects our hands and our minds. So I say, let us be brave. If the creative impulses of children are always put into a box, they quickly learn to stop being creative. And when the only answers that we can accept are the ones that are either on the test or in the back of the book or the answer that we're expecting, well, they stop looking for new solutions to interesting problems. So if we want them to grow up feeling like they can change the world, then childhood should be interesting, delightful, and just a little bit scary. Thank you.